Hello everyone and welcome back to the
Sons of Aries podcast.
Beautiful. I always said the name of my own podcast then, that was really strange.
Featuring the Critical Skeptic.
There we go.
There we go, yeah.
Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to touch on a couple of subjects, namely Incel culture, or the Incels, involuntary celibates, the statistics surrounding fatherlessness or life outcomes surrounding fatherlessness, and also kind of the general conception of, common conception of like how these things are normally thought about. So
we're keeping it easy as always.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, these light topics. So first of all, involuntary like incels. I think a lot of people have heard the term. Don't know, maybe doesn't know what it means. It stands for involuntary celibate. I think it was initially come up by a Canadian student who was sort of gay or a bit queer, using the political term queer, not the insult.
Of course.
Yeah,
It's
right.
square.
And it has kind of come to mean the subset of the male population who don't seem to be able to find themselves partners, struggle dating, and they have become resentful of women, and
by their inadequacies and also due to female choices or making it difficult for them as well.
So I think
Both sides.
the general idea is that these people blame women for not dating them, and they also blame the kind of the alpha men, like the men who are most successful, because there are men who are like, especially with like, because we spoke about dating apps a couple of weeks ago. There are some people who are very, very successful on dating apps, and there's loads of people who are not successful at all.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of
Pareto distribution.
right. Yeah.
Ingrained in.
Remember,
Exactly,
for every time someone says yes to you, they say no to 9 other geezers.
Right.
99.
People like Jordan Peterson have been talking to this. What we're calling for people rather than to criticise, blame women for this, or
Who are just doing
blame,
what's natural.
right, or blame other men, or they're responding to incentive forces in relation to dating apps, is to fix themselves. And there's a political scientist called Warren Farrell who's written a book called The Boy Crisis, and has spent a lot of his time focusing on the plight of young boys, because he considers young men to be in a crisis, and especially with regards to fatherlessness. Now this is like across racial groups, across like class groups, but if you grow up in a home without a father or a single parent household, generally speaking, the likelihood that your life outcomes will be poorer are quite high. Like you're like more likely to wind up to grow up in poverty, which makes sense because you've only got one parent, one income coming into the household. You're more likely to not be socialized properly, so you'll be more likely to fall into criminal behavior, drug and substance abuse, have children out of wedlock yourself. Even young women or women are more likely to have things like postpartum depression if they grow up without a father in the home. So there's which it makes sense a little bit if you think about it, because we're human beings. We're born of two parts, right? A mother and a father, and we're both of those things at the same time. We share genes of both male and female. Both males and females share male and female genes, and so we have. When we're raised, we have male and female aspects of ourselves, and so we need good, solid role models of both of those things. Now, obviously, there are counterexamples, because some women grow up, some women rear their children without a father and do a stellar fucking job. Not everyone who grows up without a father winds up having shit outcomes. So I'm not suggesting that at all for a second.
Or that you're just doomed to fail from the get-go.
You're not, absolutely. But but it's like the odds are stacked against you a little bit. You can do well, but
it makes sense because two people get together for certain reasons of they complement each other. So they're basically growing up without half of what made the other person like the other person to begin with. That was a bit of a convoluted way, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, exactly.
Yeah.
So incel culture, statistics around fatherlessness. There was a article put out on the Spectator magazine fairly recently talking about how with regards, because all the A-level and GCSE results have come out this year, not the kind of the first ones really outside of the COVID bubble, because they were doing the whole, we're not going to test you, we're just going to kind of come up with your grades.
Yeah.
So
Make it up.
So there was this grade inflation. So
Yeah.
and so this is kind of one of the first years really outside of that where people have started to be tested again.
Crashing back down to earth, I would imagine.
Well, yes, but I mean, people are still doing really well.
Are the standards still kept the same though?
Well, they're being tested.
Hmm.
Whereas before, like sort of during COVID, people's grades were given on like predictions based on from teachers.
Yeah.
So it's basically back to business as usual with regards to.
Did you mean are the tests easier now?
Yeah, I mean the tests the same standard at which they were before COVID.
I don't know. The
So,
answer to that
like,
question.
yeah.
I'd imagine so.
Oh yeah, I don't think they do. Maybe they would. Maybe they
It
wouldn't,
seems
but
unlikely.
I don't know the answer to that question. But in terms of the like who's going to university or who's scoring the best. Now, I'll interrupt myself to say that I'm only talking about identity here with regards to sex, men and women, and racial groups and outcomes, because we are often told that this country is patriarchal, it's skewed in favour of men, skewed in favour of whites, and that's how things are. It's baked into the fabric of our society. So I'm addressing that claim. I'm not talking about races or sexes or whatever because I'm trying to think men and whites are great or whatever. I'm just trying to generally tackle with what the hell's going on, because those claims don't match up with the evidence, which is the people who are killing it the most in education are young women. Because you watch TV or watch movies, we're telling young women that they can do everything. They're like they're forces to be reckoned with. Anything we can do, they can do better. And fair enough. That's encouraging messaging, and as a consequence, they're killing it in education. They're outperforming boys in secondary school and universities as well. I think in primary schools it's fairly level. I think once you get to secondary and universities, there's a bit more of an imbalance. I think more young women are.
What you mean when society's had more of an impact on you?
Yeah. Well, when the messaging that you get from
I'm asking that as like almost a question there.
Yeah.
Like, is that maybe why?
No,
in
yeah.
primary school it's more level, but once they start to develop more, then that's where the differences start to come in, because society has had a
because they're being told, right? Young women are being told that this world's skewed against you, but you can do it. You can if you want to be an engineer, go be an engineer. You want to do mathematics, go do mathematics.
Well, I remember as well, you can't really fail in primary school, so the metrics aren't the same to measure by. Cause
true.
Everyone can, let's say,
drop
the ball in a bucket. Pretty much anyone can do that.
Yeah.
So secondary school, you have there's much wider range of possible scores and outcomes. But I'd also say that that seems to be when your personality will kick in more and your temperament, right? So I think I'm right in saying that generally women are more conscientious than men. So obviously in the secondary school that requires you to literally do more work, not primary school where it's just, spell cat, here it is. When you have to have some agency to get it done or to do more learning, it makes sense the most conscientious people would do better, and they're women.
Yeah, I think if we go back to I think the second episode we did when we went through my
Big Five
scores. I think the differences between men and female, I think women are slightly more conscientious than men. So I don't think it's like a huge difference between the two. But the point is that I'm like, it's not a problem that women are killing it. Alright, that's not the point I'm trying to make. I'm not doing like men are being left behind and women are doing well. No, although it's great. It's absolutely fucking brilliant that women are killing it in education. But the messaging they are being told is one of while there's like a message of you're up against it, it's then coming with a message of encouragement, right? Whereas with young men and young boys, we're being told that you're basically a baby tyrant, and you are like very, very close to being like any expression of your sort of like masculine energy is considered toxic. Frequently, young men are just terrified to approach women, right? Mainly because everything's online, like we were saying earlier, with dating apps and social media, but also because, you run the risk of being called a creep, right? And
That's probably the worst thing you can get called, I think, other than, you know, stuff that we probably won't mention. But yeah, if someone thinks you're a creep, that is like
it's a dick.
That's
it's a big
crushing,
dick.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you're just like your intentions are pure and you're actually trying to like spark up a conversation, and maybe you do it awkwardly because you don't do it that often.
Yeah.
And it comes across a bit like, you know, not good.
Hi.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a creep.
Fucking salad fingers, that was.
Yeah, I'm doing that again.
Yeah.
So no, so like, so I wanted to. So also that there's the claim that this is a patriarchal society set up against women, but then the statistics of who's doing well in schools, and you know, and therefore you could say, well, later on in life, if you do well in school and university, your outcomes are probably going to be better than if they don't, or you don't even go in the first place. I think in that Spectator article, for every 100 girls that go to university, only 75 boys will.
Do you think that's because I think they have a duty to? Because, you know, they're told... So this is something like my mum says a lot about voting. She's like, people didn't have this for a long time. Women died for this. There's no way I'm not going to fucking do it.
Sure.
So it could be something similar to that.
Yeah, maybe. Well, and they're being encouraged to. Like you can go and do whatever you want to do. Like, that's encouraging messaging. But
Sure, but boys are as well. Because, you know, as we know, universities are basically as much of a money-making scheme as they are an educational establishment. So they wouldn't want to cut their customer base in half, would they? So, bear in mind, I have been in school in 15 years.
Yeah, but I'm not saying it's the it's the universities that are necessarily doing the message. It's something. It's more of a cultural phenomenon which has come out of that aspects of the universities, like the particular radical, certain aspects of radical feminism or like social justice studies. The idea that sort of maleness or manness or patriarchy is like the nature of our society and favours the young men, because like you were saying just before we started recording, the attitude is something like, well, you've had your turn, boys, right? Like, there are men
for thousands of years.
For thousands of years, societies have been set up and have favoured your kind, and you've all been leaders, and you've all been warriors, and you've all been these, like, you've been workers and all the rest of it, and women have been left at home, and they've been
pushed
subordinated and pushed down.
Yeah.
So shut the fuck up and let the women have a crack at it. And I'm saying to that, why the hell can't everyone do well? Like, why is it that you have to tell half of the population that they're pieces of shit just to make room for the other half of the population?
Because we've very much narrowed the parameters of what constitutes doing well. So, you know, it's basically elevating your social class, and doing like a middle class or above job is doing well. If you're not, then don't matter how much money you make, let's say in that kind of consciousness that's come into rather schools and universities, etc. Certainly was when I was there. Like, let's say, even if you were a plumber and you made 150 grand a year, it's like, guy's a plumber, gives a fuck. But no, he's doing better than you'll ever do. But I've got a bit of theory to offer as to
go for it.
Why women go through the pathway more. And I think it might be just, in terms of temperament, because of the higher neuroticism, I think women in general seek safety a lot more. Now, obviously, that within that path is safety. It's like, that's laid out. I'm told I do this, I get this. There's the thing I can follow, and nothing's going to go wrong. Great.
Yeah, I'll sort myself out, and then I'm secure, individual.
Exactly that. Whereas, you know, blokes are, I think, tend to be a bit more happy-go-lucky and swashbuckling. So maybe might fall afoul of that, because, you know, you make bad decisions when you're young and you're rammed full of hormones, the same way I did. Then you're off that path and you're kind of fucked, and it takes quite a lot to get back on it. So if you don't have like cushy brat financial backing like I do, or you're not really clever or really talented in some way, you ain't getting back on that. And then it's just like whatever the abundant equivalent of down the pits is for you.
Yeah.
So I think that could be a reason. It's the seeking of security. And what else is a system and civilization but security? Sure.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people go to universities because there is this expectation that you should, that it increases the likelihood of you doing well.
Definitely.
It provides you with a foundation for moving forward with your life. So I think that might be a fair one.
That's why I did it.
Yeah.
It was just what you do. It's basically well, I'm one of the clever kids. I go to university. That's it.
But on the point of security, I don't think that necessarily grants you that, because I think we're confronted with the fact that loads of young people have gone to universities because of this expectation. They've left universities and they've found that their degree is more or less completely useless.
Yeah, but when they choose it, they don't know it.
No, they don't know until they.
So that's why it's a temperamental thing, because that represents security. Whether or not it's a Wizard of Oz, it's another debate.
Okay.
But if in that time, if you think that's a secure option, then you're going to go for
Which
it.
does seem at that point, because you are
right, okay,
18 years old.
Because it is the safe option, air quotes, at that time.
You want a good job, you go to uni. That is like the thing. Like
putting aside the possible deceit of the fact that it might not be.
It's a rare 18-year-old who'd go, I'm going to sod off going to Oxford, I'm going to do a start-up. Like, that's very, very rare, because it's extraordinarily risky.
Yeah, no, true.
Often people at that point, like the tiny 0.1% obviously succeed, but most people don't have that experience or life experience or ideas to go and do something like that, and the financial backing to start it.
And you're young, you're naive, you don't know shit other than what you've seen and what you've been told. Or like a bit of extrapolation, and that if that's all you know is possible. But your choices, you still remember being, 17 or 18, whatever it was. Your choices: go to university or fuck off and get a job.
Yeah.
People don't think there's third, fourth, fifth, and sixth.
100%.
Maybe
definitely
because
not.
maybe there wasn't so much back then. The internet and the kind of swashbuckling entrepreneurial DIY online business spirit wasn't there. But there still would have been other things one could have done.
Yeah, well, no, but there's always been entrepreneurs prior to access to the internet, or it would have been something that would have been an option for people. But again, I don't think you're not encouraged to be like that when you're at school, right? There is this kind of you don't.
No, it was very rarely spoke about, that sort of side of things. It was like the general jobs, like police, teacher, plumber, trades, all those, or you go to uni.
Right. Yeah, you go to college and you do
uni for some of those, but you see my point. It was very like the very basic lineup of jobs was always in the sort of the limelight.
But it's even in the classroom and the teaching where I don't think they actively. Well, in fact, maybe they do actively discourage that kind of free thought, critical thinking, whatever word you want to use. Because there's a couple of scenarios I remember in English and media, and even doing my degree actually, where you have to do like a little presentation of how you've analysed this play or this film or whatever the fuck. And I did a couple of these where they were like, that's brilliant, what was your source? I'm like, I thought of it, I worked it out. And they're like, oh, it's irrelevant then. So that well, you can imagine, that pissed me off. Like, when that happened at university, I had a full fucking hissy fit. Left the room and kicked the Mars bar machine in. I was so pissed off. Because I thought, I'm fucking genius. But this is my point. The teacher agreed until he realised it was that was my opinion, that was my original work. So that was completely discouraging.
University?
Yeah.
That is weird.
100%. I fucking swear on my life this happened.
Yeah.
By the way, right in front of the whole class.
Where did you got that? Forget that.
So I had like this internal like.
What was the idea?
Oh, it was about I think I was analysing the Truman Show, or something. And I'd noticed like a pattern of how it was shot, and like there were numbers on screen that meant stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I went, that must be significant. So I googled it. I was like, that's what those numbers mean. So that's definitely something they're reflecting. Whatever, it's pretentious, but the principle applies. But because I thought of it, it was bullshit.
Yeah, because no one had wrote it down before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're talking about. The discouraging of that creative free thinking. And as a lesser person, to be fair, as I was back then, would be very discouraged by that. Let's go bollocks with it. So from that point, I just went really cynical. You know what I'm like? Sure. I took the piss. I basically just, when I had to do essays from that point, I didn't do anything myself. Copied and pasted, changed the word, put the source. And you know what? They still give you a first for doing that. Fucking bollocks.
Yeah, well, because you've got the grading metric, and you can you just have to match your work to the grading metric, and then you get the score. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily
very cynically tailored. Yeah.
And I think it depends on the teacher and the lecturer as well, because if they themselves are closed-minded or not free-thinking individuals, and they are sort of part of the institution, part of the crew, part of the ship, then they can they can discourage that when they're confronted with it because it highlights their own failure to be...
I don't understand that. It must be bollocks.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I get it. This bit is surprising because this guy, he wasn't like a full teacher. He was kind of drafted in as a teacher. He was a really big time film editor. So he wasn't a teacher. It was like he was in the creative industry himself, and he still shit on this. So actually, with that information, that's even more surprising that he did that.
Fair enough.
Prick. But anyway, that I went off on a tangent there, but,
Right.
but I think that's the best experience that I can think of that can prove that what you said basically is very valid. Sorry, I feel like I've tanked it there.
No, okay. Well, it's so tying that back to the theme is that as always, right, there's more than one reason for things that happen in the world, right? There's lots of stuff going on. The world is complex. There is more than just the message that you're told on TV. There's people's temperament. There's the nature and organization of the institutions that you get involved in. Like again, I imagine we went to Hatfield, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I imagine it would probably be quite different if you went to somewhere like Oxford,
Yeah.
right, or if like a Russell Group University, right? You'd probably have a different experience. Although saying that, I have bumped up against some very narrow-minded people at Russell Group University.
I was going to say, I thought it'd be more oppressive, surely. Because it'd be much more like stuck in the dogma of the old style of academia, I suppose.
Well, but I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, because I know the style of academia is the I appreciate your point, like to steelman I guess your lecturer or the teacher's viewpoint is I guess one of the dogmas is about that point of citation, right? Like epistemic humility, right? Like you show, if you're engaging with an idea, well, creative thinking is difficult, tricky, and unlikely. And generally speaking, if there's an idea, it's got some kind of a relation to another idea or some kind of connection to something that exists. So the kind of academic dogma or standard of like citation, show your work, or like I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for lecturers to be insistent on that, but they also have to recognise that, well, someone may just have an idea at some point and may not necessarily have, would be organic. Maybe they're responding to some other ideas, but they're not necessarily explicitly aware of it. So to allow for that in the classroom. But no, I don't like. It's tricky. It's very difficult to talk about this because universities are very large places. I mean, like Edinburgh's like 45,000+ students. It's going to have thousands of lecturers, or hundreds and hundreds of lecturers and teaching faculty. So it's very difficult to speak about what the teaching style is like or what the kind of standards are, because you'll bump up against brilliant people who are very good teachers, but then you'll bump up against complete fucking idiots who are, I don't know, like ideologically possessed or very narrow-minded, or because I think because the standards have been dropping, academically speaking, over the last 50-60 years. I had a conversation with a couple of people who proofread PhD papers and have been doing so over several decades, and one of the things they pointed out to me was that the kinds of mistakes they come across now in PhD drafts or PhD theses are the kinds of mistakes that they would have come across in undergraduate work 15 years ago, and that you wouldn't expect to see in anywhere near PhD work. The kind of like the mistakes they're seeing now are mistakes that you just wouldn't previously have been like, get the fuck out. Why you shouldn't be making these kinds of mistakes at this level, and that's something that's happening quite a lot. So I think the teaching faculty or academic staff are well, I don't want to be like harsh about it, but some of them probably shouldn't be there,
Mhm.
right? So like the likelihood that you're going to bump up against a teacher who's not a good teacher and not a good thinker, I think is increasingly high, because of this like gradual lowering of standards.
Yeah.
So it's unfortunate, but it's difficult to describe because obviously there are still loads of good people out there.
I heard a thing to go along with that a while ago. It was something like over the last few hundred years, every generation has gone up something like, I think it's 7 IQ points across like an average.
Okay.
So something like 20 every 20 or 25 years is that a generation roughly?
20,
7
25,
points.
yeah.
7 points of IQ higher, general speaking. Over quite a while. I can't remember exactly, but that was generally the gist of it.
So you're saying we hit the apex and we're on the way back down now? Or?
No. So it should technically be going up. So to go along with Matt's point of them dropping the standards, it looks as though they could be dropping them even more than what you may see because of because of the increase. What we should be looking at. So in fact, it should be going up.
Well, but that presupposes exponential growth, right? There'll be like a diminishing returns on that, presumably. Like, it wouldn't just keep going up and up and up and up. It might, like,
no one will have a 10,000 IQ and 50,000 years. For
so, like, there would be like a period of progress,
No.
maybe spanning hundreds of
years, yeah.
But then there would be like, like again, like use weight training as an example, right? You have this initial.
Yeah, but I don't think it's been long enough yet of an increase to get to that point.
So hundreds of years, did you say?
Well, I don't know exactly, but like we've not been like for thousands of years we were all probably at a level, and now we've started to go up from.
I would imagine we are all cleverer than like our Roman era equals.
Yeah, like the
I think
average
that's
people.
what he's getting at.
Yeah.
So like you'd be a fairly average Joe.
Yeah.
I imagine you'd be like 30 points higher than like your standard legionaries like you. Who's like, shall I just dig this here then and stab him? Yeah, nice. But what I would say is, in terms of dropping the standards based on IQ, to use your word that I quite like, so I'm going to nick there, but that's presupposing that they're testing for intelligence. Maybe they're not. I think, at risk of sounding conspiratorial, quite a lot of it is a test for levels of diligence and compliance. Because they don't want you to be really, really, really clever. They want you to be able to do the fucking work. That's the thing.
Universities are testing for that, or
I think in general in schools as well, because
right,
quite a large part of I think the scoring is, or how well your teacher, whatever thinks you're doing, is based on how well you can just knuckle down and shut the fuck up and do it, more so than how smart you actually are.
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to like this, just the marking standard. It's like you practice just passing tests.
Yeah.
So you get good at passing tests, not necessarily
Thinking.
Not necessarily thinking.
Which is the conversation we had a lot. Sorry, with I keep pointing. Jason and I had it at school when he was like, I don't get how to do this. I'm like, I'm not writing anything good. I just know what they want, so I'm ticking fucking boxes.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you're smart, you can mug it
Going
off.
back to that, yeah, very like almost eye-opening for me to hear, because no one had ever, especially teachers, had ever explained to me that what sort of thing or sort of line of thinking you have to go down to understand or come up with ideas, especially the more abstract sort of lessons like media, for example, when Dan used to do really well, and I just didn't understand how he could see shit that I couldn't see.
Just made it up.
And it basically, and one of the things that stuck with me, even to this day, was basically be as pretentious as you can be when looking or thinking about stuff. And basically that started to teach me how to then see more than just what was on face value.
Yeah, because you're analysing bits of creative work, and I'll tell you, the people who make those are pretentious as fuck, so get on their level.
Yeah.
Because if you spotted something, they either meant to put it there, or they go, oh, yeah, glad someone finally noticed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, yes, like if there's a gameable system, people are going to realise that it's there to be gamed and mug it off, like you said. But like the downside is that the people who pick that up or get taught that that's there for them to take advantage of, like they'll do it, like and it will work, right? You'll pass your tests, you'll get good grades, you'll maybe get opportunities, you'll go to university, you'll get some awards or whatever it is, but there will come a point in time when like the rubber meets the road, and maybe you're like a teacher. you've gone through all of these tests and scores and all the rest of it, and maybe you're running like an organization, or maybe you're in government now, or like you actually have an important job where it's needed that you actually be able to think, right, and not just be trained at gaming systems that, well, you'll be incompetent, right? But you'll be clever enough to
Billy bullshit.
Yeah, you'll obfuscate, you'll muddy the water, you'll engage in corruption to hide the fact that you're self-conscious about the fact that you're not very good, but you've been through all these institutions and they've spat you out, and here you are in this really important job.
Hi, Boris.
Yeah, or a whole bunch of other things we could point to. And then you wind up with having millions and millions of people in society running very, very important things who aren't very competent, which isn't good for anybody.
So
including,
so long as they tick the boxes on the way, and they're in, and that's it.
Yeah. It's like appearance over substance or something like that. It's like you seem like you tick all the boxes. You seem like you're intelligent,
worthy
capable, thinker, worthy enough for this position. And then in actual substance, it's
well, you get that with, like, you just made me think there, like some teachers you come across. Well, I mean, like that's what you were hitting on, basically, wasn't it? Is that even in secondary school, some of the teachers you encounter, you were like, "How are you a teacher? You're shit at this." Like you're meant to. That there's not much more to say than that. They are just shit.
I can think of a couple, certainly.
Yeah. We can all think of people like that.
Well, I've taken a few lessons at school as a student because the teacher had fucked off or didn't know what they were talking about. That's genuinely something that happened. Where I was like, oh fuck's sake, I'll just do it.
Well, good. That's excellent. That's good initiative. It's like, because I would wager that in most of my classes, well, even when there was a teacher, everyone was just had so many awkward lessons. Where in a seminar, so there's like 15, 17 of you, 20 max. It's not like in a big lecture hall where there's 100 that you can hide behind the number, right? So if you in a lecture, if you don't want to pay attention or you want to just sit there and close your eyes for a few hours, you can. No one's going to notice. No one cares if you do. But in a seminar, when there's 15 of you or 20 of you, and there's a lecturer. And he's kind of talking through something and then engaging with you.
Because there's so few, you can actually get round like most people.
Yeah, it's a bit more interactive.
Yeah.
You can ask questions, things like that. But I had so many classes where everyone was just still doing the whole, I'm just going to turn up because I have to, and I'm going to sit here and I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to partake. And so the lecturer starts talking for like 10 minutes and then stops and checks to see if everyone's alright, and then no one fucking says anything. I'm just sat there like,
what, because no one's following?
No, because I don't know. Maybe they don't feel very confident. Maybe they're not following, or maybe they're just like, I'm going back to the whole. I'm expected to go to university either by my parents, by my culture, or something.
But I don't actually want to be here.
Yeah, I don't want to be here, and all I need to do is go through the process of being here, so I can come out the other side.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, and
to be fair to them, the lecture is an extraordinarily boring means of teaching people. Fuck me, it's dull as dishwater. So you auditorium full of 200 people with someone going, and this next slide is about, I don't know, what was it in Nottingham, like, where the British moved furs through the Chesapeake Bay. It's like, oh my fucking god. Yeah. Number one, I already know. Number two, can you grow a pair of bollocks and make it interesting?
Don't lecture me, Obi-Wan.
Yeah, literally. Fuck you, lecturer, I know more than you. That sounds like very much like 18-year-old me.
The name just sounds boring on its own.
What, lecturer? Yeah, so it's a very droning thing. Shall we pivot to the topic of incels? Because we promised everyone we talk about that, and that's kind of the juiciest bit.
Go for it, yeah.
Hey man, I'm bringing you in here. I don't know.
Oh, sorry.
Go, talk.
I thought you had a question or you wanted to
introduce the incel.
Let's get him out.
Bring out the gimp.
I don't know. It seems like there is a. Do you have a GIMP mask? I'll wear it.
I've got several.
I've got several.
All in different colours.
Different zips in different places.
Well, you're not an incel then, because you're banging or being banged as a GIMP.
Yeah, no trouble finding partners.
I'm a voluntary, involuntary incel.
Let me in the club, guys. I want to be in.
Oh, the GIMP's here.
Anyway. Go.
Go. Play, monkey.
Do it.
Speak, priest!
No. I don't know much about this. I'm like, it's something you get brought up all the time, right? This Yvette Cooper,
Actually, the Home Secretary.
Home Secretary, and it's come out recently and said that misogyny is going to be, or they're going to do an investigation to look to update the kind of terror program, and misogyny is going to be in there, considered in the same place as like far right extremism and radical Islam. And like the BBC article brings up like incels and Andrew Tate as like an increasing, people like Andrew Tate like as an increasing concern that young men are going to like these kinds of people for role models, and that they're being encouraged to or don't like women.
But what's interesting is, does his audience reflect him, or does he reflect what's already there? So basically, did he game the system and see a thing and go, I can make a shitload of money out of people by being their messiah? Or is he actually being himself and people have followed him organically?
Maybe a bit of both.
I fucking knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I did. Of course it was.
But it is
No,
right.
but it is right, yeah.
Don't put forward two like equally possible like, things.
They basically feed each other.
Yeah.
These two sides of all these things we talk about, they breed each other.
But I think what's interesting though is the distinction between what we'd call an incel and someone who's just kind of not very good with women. So incel has the connotations are a bit more like pernicious, like they're their own little group, like a mini kind of dark cult on the other side of the internet.
Well, no, I guess the thing that winds me up about this is that, going back to what we were saying earlier about young boys and young men being kind of left behind a little bit because of the expectations of the society's built for you, so why do you need any additional encouragement from anybody, including and there's been this criticism of the idea of the nuclear family because it's not inclusive and it makes people who don't do that feel left out, and so it's patriarchal and oppressive anyway, so why would you do that to someone? And it's like there have been these critiques of how we do things that have brought about, and going back to we were talking about social media, we were talking about dating apps, right, and the kind of incentives that play there, that we've kind of created this landscape where, yes, these young men should be developing themselves to increase their attractiveness to people rather than being resentful and hating people for it, but it's not their fault that they've wound up where they are. Like, because if you don't have a father in the home, you don't have a positive role model. Like in primary schools, are mostly female teachers, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a male. Like if you're a young boy and you don't have a father in the home, you don't have a male role model. Unless you're watching movies or you're online and you're.
But you're not interacting with films, so yeah, I guess.
Right, yeah. And so you don't have positive role models at school. You don't have them at home. So who the hell's there to tell you that the solution to you not being attractive to people is to put yourself together? And I think that's why people like Jordan Peterson have been so popular, because he's turned up and just started telling people that.
Because he's not going, they're diddums.
Right, but one of the things he says is, it's, because people have a go at him for crying every now and again, but
isn't that very toxic to have a go at a man for crying?
Well, I know, but I think his frustration is something like they need so little encouragement to do well. A young boy or a young man just needs a little bit of that was fucking great. Like you can do it. Like go and chase your dreams. Go and chase the dragon, right? Chase the dragon. No, go and fight the dragon.
Don't chase the dragon for fuck's sake.
But
the dragon leads to bad places, man.
He says they need so little encouragement. That because people are like, oh, what are you doing for young men? He's like, not a lot. I'm just telling them that they can be better than they are.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then they're responding to that because they're not getting it from anywhere else. And then so you have this incel culture that emerges because you've got young men who are just like, I don't really know what to do. I'm basically born, and everyone's like, you'll be fine because you're a man. And then it's like,
because you've always been fine for thousands of years, yeah.
Right,
So,
but look, but for those thousands of years, they've had a structure of, well, here's what you do as a young man, right? They've been, you know, they've had their heroes and myths, and they've been given Aristotle to read, or they've been given Shakespeare to read, or whatever.
Yeah, in the classical era, if you were like a fancy pants, you would go into law or into politics. If you were a normal guy, you'd go in the fucking army. That was basically it, and you're happy with that because it gives you a purpose. I'm not saying that's the best way to do it, but we can have some kind of equivalent of that.
Oh, but it just seems really harsh as like the general culture as you hear incel, and like you said, you think of this kind of seedy degenerate who's just seething and hating a computer, and like, well, yes, that's not desirable. Like that has been brought about, and that's emerged as a phenomenon. And then the whole country and society has gone, you're a piece of fucking shit. And they're like, well, okay, then I'm a piece of fucking shit. I'm going to be a piece of shit. Because, like, I was born, and there's, like, I get zero fucking encouragement from anybody. I then get told I'm a piece of shit. I'm going to be a piece of shit. Right? So you can all go and fuck yourselves. And I think it's harsh that they get turned on like that, and not people like Warren Farrell, people like Jordan Peterson, who are actually trying to talk to that, they get accused of being misogynistic, hateful bigots for just trying to talk about it. So that would be what I have to say about incels. And actually, I'll tell you one more thing, right? Have you ever heard of transmaxing?
Nope.
No. Right. Well, I'm going to tell you about transmaxing. Transmaxing is a phenomenon where young men, who we could say are incels, right? Broadly speaking, in this class of people who are low status males, right? And they have figured out that their life chances as low status males are so bad that it is more beneficial for them to transition and become artificially attractive women, because the positive affirmation you receive for coming out as doing so is tremendous. There are people out there who are so inclusive and so for this thing, women included, that they are willing to be open-minded to dating a trans woman as a lesbian and not have an issue with the fact that it's a biological male. And that there's a transmaxing manifesto on the internet. You can go and read it. They give case studies of how to like change your voice. They give you recommendations of kinds of porn to watch to get you in the mindset. And there's a list of reasons why they would do this, including some of the ones I've mentioned, and things like access to female spaces. Right? So like this is like another unintended consequence of, well, what like you've got this sort of trans-affirming or gender-affirming care attitude of anyone who says that they are the other gender, you just give them the big thumbs up. And if you do anything other than that, you're a transphobe, you're engaging in conversion therapy, and you should go to prison. You get love-bombed if you do this. And you've got this emergent incel culture, some of whom have realised that, well, I'm better off being a woman. Like my life chances, like, because maybe because tranny porn on Pornhub or whatever, there's a category for it. People love it. Like it's not one of the lower down ones. It's always up there somewhere. Not that I
wouldn't
know.
know.
From personal experience. But, no, but you've seen the category on there, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like so maybe you can get used to the idea of, because maybe you'll attract a wealthy male partner as a trans woman, right? And then your life outcomes will be better than if you'd just stayed the person that you are.
Gaming the system again.
Well, and I read this manifesto and some of these case studies, and some of these young men are not unattractive. Like they're not like little horrible basement dwellers. They are perfectly normal young men who are just left out of the system and have concluded that they're better off physically and chemically mutilating themselves because their life chances would be better.
It's a bold strategy. I'll give them that.
It's a bold strategy.
Yeah.
That's
That's
ironically
a one-way ticket.
It's a very big dick play.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So I would.
Sorry, I was a rant there.
No. I think you're saying rant, not rant. By the way, it's technically rant, but I prefer rant.
What did I say?
You said rant, which is in my book a-okay.
Oh, okay.
So
Well,
a
not
question
Americans.
is, as a rant
All Welsh.
or rant, kind of contrasting to Indian there. I wonder what is the connection between fatherlessness and incelhood,
Yes. Yeah.
incelly boys?
Well,
I would imagine there might be one, right?
Well, I would imagine that if you're not successful, like I think I said this a while ago, which is you have male and female, you have male and female genes, right? You're part male, part female, part mother, part father, right? And so there are both of those aspects to you, and so having positive role models for both of those will help you socialize yourself, so that when you go out into the world and you start talking to people, even if it is on things like Tinder or social media, you're socialized such that you can actually engage with people, so that you can have relationships, so that you are attractive to people. I think that's what helps people get to the point where they're attractive to other people, is because you're socialized properly. If you don't if half of that picture is missing, and you've got a mother trying her best to be both of those things, and probably not, sometimes doing a great job, sometimes not, then you won't be socialized, and then you'll struggle in the dating landscape. And then you'll be like, well, what the fuck do I do? And if you don't have someone like a Jordan Peterson or like a Warren Farrell who comes along and says, hey, look, as a father figure, or as a, there's an organisation called Dads Need Lads. No, Lads Need Dads, sorry. That one. First one's a bit dicey there.
Was that another porn category?
That's the UK's leading rent boy agency.
No, other way around. Lads need dads, to be very fucking clear.
not daddies.
Oh no. Yeah.
No, but they're making this same thing. It was what's his name? David Lammy, is it? In the Labour government after the
Foreign Secretary, I believe.
Yeah, that's the one. After the 2011 riots, he made a point of noting that I think there were like 29 people who were arrested, and he made a point of pointing out that 90% of them didn't have a father in the home. The people
You go, what are you fucking doing, you dickhead? Yeah.
Well, just the fact that would be something that played into them being the kind of person that would be out on the street when the moment arrived that you could go and do such a thing. And I'm curious, because we've got a whole bunch of people being arrested currently for the most recent riots that have happened. I would be curious to see if David Lammy's asking the same question now, given that the same kind of thing has happened.
Probably not.
Probably not. But maybe he is, and that would be good if he is.
Let us know, Dave.
But I would be curious, right? Like, how many of the people who have been arrested for engaging in violent conduct in the last couple of weeks, how many of those people had dads in the home? I think it would be telling. And so, I think that contributes to the, with the most recent riots, there is the kind of broader issue of, again, people feel disenfranchised and left out of public discourse, right? Because the people who voted for Brexit, for example, were just ridiculed as empire, nostalgics or racists or all the rest of it, and which sure, with their some probably, but I don't think it necessarily follows that because you wanted UK sovereignty that therefore you're a horrible racist. And I think people have been voting for lesser or more sensible approaches to immigration. Again, I don't think that wanting to have a conversation about immigration makes you a racist.
That would be 50% of the population or more.
Right. Yeah, well, no, exactly.
51%.
Yeah, but obviously not everyone voted, but yeah,
right.
Generally.
52% of the people who voted voted to leave the European Union and were just ridiculed for having done so.
And they fucking won.
And, but even now, there's been, we had a 7-year argument about it afterwards, with people like Keir Starmer, up until the point where it was not happening anymore, pushing for a second referendum. So there was this, and look, I don't want to get too much into the weeds here because it was obviously it was a close vote, and maybe it should have been more of a, we should have had a conversation about it rather than just deciding to go gung ho. But the recent riots, I think, because again we're told it's just the white supremacists, it's just the angry gammons or whatever it is, and it's like, well, there's so much more going on. You've got like just years and years and years of people voting and asking for serious conversations about certain issues and just being dismissed as horrible little wretches, and then they're just going, right, well, go fuck yourself. And I'm not justifying any of the violence that happened for a bloody second, but again, with the incel things, there's the appearance, and then there's, well, what the hell's going on in the background? There's the appearance of, all of a sudden there's riots on the street, well, and then it's like, well, white supremacists, or it's the far right, or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, well, what's going on underneath?
Because no one actually talks to these people.
No, because that's why they're upset, is because they just get fucking ignored. They just get ignored because they think the wrong thing. Like, you're not cosmopolitan enough. You're not.
And then you go, well, why is Trump so popular? I don't understand. Because you're not fucking spoke to anyone.
Well, no, but that's what these people do. Like the Nigel Farages, the Trumps of the world. They listen to these people, and it doesn't make them evil. It doesn't make them horrible, racists, fascists, just for listening to the general public. It's just absurd to me that that's the general argument that's put out, that like you just hear people talk about it casually, and that's the thing that people say. They parrot what they hear on the news. It's like, it baffles me that we can't have serious conversations about this, because it's not like these aren't important conversations. All the racial, the sexual, the like immigration, multiculturalism, these are all, the climate, these are all very important conversations.
Yeah, we got very sanctimonious as a culture somewhere down the line, didn't we?
Well, aspects of it did, yeah. The kind of again, the kind of cosmopolitan London, Birmingham, Manchester, the inner city, the kind of progressive types who figured out that, well, that's our way or the highway, right? Like, either we're a one world, open borders, no one's illegal, everyone should have perfectly equal outcomes, and if you think anything other than that, then you're a dickhead. And that's pretty much where we are.
So how do we fix it?
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
Yeah. And I'm not advocating the legions this time.
Well, yet.
Yet, yeah. But that seems a very obvious solution, is it? To have genuine good faith dialogue.
Well, yeah, it would be to keep trying, because what's happening is, because people are legitimately scared to engage in good faith dialogue, because if you do, you'll get called names, right? It's risky, it's costly to have these conversations publicly and openly, because if you start to have influence and someone hears you, you'll get shut down, you'll get cancelled, you get called names, your reputation will be destroyed, and it doesn't matter that ultimately it will be shown that what you did was perfectly reasonable. The damage is already done. Yeah. People have already clocked off.
They find what you said 10 years ago on some tweet, and then that's it, out the door.
Well, or even if it's that they misrepresent something you say now.
Oh yeah, a little soundbite, 10-second clip from a 10.
Well, I'll give you an example.
Speech. Yeah.
There was a lecturer at Edinburgh University called Neil Thin. He was an anthropology lecturer. He taught happiness and well-being, and there was an event on campus called Resisting Whiteness, and I'm a free speech academic freedom guy. You want to host an event, say what the fuck you want. I really don't care. You should be able to say what you think. People should be able to say what they think about what you think, right? But one of the things they had a Q&A during the end, and they did this thing where they said, white people can't ask questions first, right? You have to wait, right? And he said, that's racial segregation. You've just discriminated on, like, you're free to say your opinion about what you think is going on, about what your idea of whiteness is and all the rest of it. That's your right to say what you think. But what you've just done there is racial segregation. You've discriminated against people based on their skin color. Yeah. That's not okay. Yeah. Right? And he was accused of being a racist for saying this. He was accused of being transphobic because he liked something J.K. Rowling said on Twitter, giving it a little heart, right? This was captured. He was painted as a transphobic racist and a bigot. People complained against him to the university. He was suspended pending an investigation, which ultimately showed that he did nothing wrong. Everything he said was perfectly reasonable, and so then reinstated. And he then couldn't go back to the. He retired because his reputation had been destroyed. Everyone already thought, oh, Neil Finn's been suspended for accusations of racism and transphobia. Well,
yeah, it must be a wrong one.
Yeah, it must be a wrong one. Why would you be accused of those things if you hadn't said anything racist or transphobic?
Yeah.
So organisations like the Free Speech Union or Academics for Academic Freedom contain people who have either been squeezed out or left academia or refused to bow to this kind of stuff. And the Free Speech Union, for example, their policy, but you can buy, it's like 25 quid for a year. You get a legal policy with your membership, and that covers you get free legal advice, and that covers up to like 25 grand or 50 grand or whatever it is for legal fees if your institution or your place of employment persecutes you for speaking your mind, right? And they'll defend you, and they'll go to court with you, or they'll send letters and all the rest of it. And so, I can't remember, it's something like a fifth of all of their cases are from universities within regards to the conversation of gender, right? So people are getting picked on or bullied or called into DEI meetings or punished or squeezed out of universities for having the wrong opinions and saying the wrong things or doing what Neil Finn did. So that's what's happening, and so people aren't having these conversations, to go back to your question of how do we fix this, because they are legitimately and reasonably scared to. I can't remember the name of the thing. It's like a Russian story or something where it's like Ivan the Terrible. It won't be that, it'll be someone else, but he had a golden cuff, right? And he went and placed it in the courtyard.
I think that is right.
Right, and he went and placed it in the courtyard in the middle of the public square and left it there, left no one guarding it, right? And no one fucking touched it. Because everyone was like, that is Ivan the Terrible's little cuffling. If you touch it, he's going to cut your bits off, right? Or something bad's going to happen if you touch the cuffling, right? And this is what's happening, right? They're dropping all these little ideas, no one's open borders, no one's illegal, trans women are women, right? Systemic racism, systemic patriarchy. These are little cufflinks, right? And if you go anywhere fucking near them and you pick them up or you touch them, someone comes along and cuts your bits off, right? Or accuses you, or there's a punishment. Or they club you on the head with a horrible name, and so people are like, well, I'm not doing that because I'm not a fucking idiot, right? I don't want to lose my job. I have a mortgage to pay. I have kids to feed. I don't like. So we need to have the conversation and talk about these things because people aren't, and we have to show that. Because it's a good tactic, right? Because if you can alienate and isolate people into little silos on their own, where they feel that they aren't surrounded by people and they're being attacked, they'll just shut up, right? Mm-hmm. They'll just shut up because it's the path of least resistance, and they'll either apologize and say what they think you want them to hear, and then they'll go along with the thing and they'll punish other people to try and show how virtuous and good they are, and now they're on the right side of things, so maybe I'll be left alone in the future. But if you can show people that, well, no, if you speak your mind and you're attacked, there are other people who will come and stand by you, who will stand by your side and defend you, even if you do say something stupid or unsavory, right? Because people do say stupid and unsavory things. Right, and I think this happens a lot. They just get left and abandoned, and then people have got a reason not to talk. And I know it sounds boring, but we do just need to talk about this stuff. We need to show that you can have a serious conversation about gender theory, about trans maxing, about immigration, about riots, about incels, about systemic racism, about. You can have reasonable conversations, and you can disagree with people reasonably about these things. So yeah, I know it's not a very practical answer, but and I've been talking for a long time now, so I'm going to shut up.
I'll think about how to make it happen. As in, not him shutting up.
I have a way. I've got a sword.
Oh, I'd say, do you want me to get the gimp again?
Yeah. The ball gag this time.
Oh, don't Marcellus Wallace me.
As opposed to the gag we all have talking about these issues.
Right. Yeah,
That was a
very
terrible
good.
segue. That was shit. Right, on that really,
And
really...
what does Marcellus Wallace look like?
His soul.
His soul?
Yeah, the briefcase.
Oh no, I was saying,
Oh, sorry.
you know, he says, what does Marcellus Wallace look like?
Oh, sorry.
What colour is he? What?
I missed
What?
The quote. I missed the quote.
I don't know what colour what is.
Lost me.
That person's clearly never been on Twitter. Right, before we digress, let's sack it off, chaps. So if you have an idea of how to solve all these problems, do let us know.
Yeah, let us know. No, well, I won't be. I may be on future episodes of the Sons of Aries podcast, but this will be my last one for a while, I think. Unless we do an online one.
In which you'll be in the middle of bloody nowhere.
With terrible connection.
Yeah. And we'll ask a question and you'll reply in 20 seconds.
And that's how I'll sound. And that'll be my input.
We won't know until we upload it though. No, we won't even hear it. We're like, that was good guys, yeah. Upload it. No one can hear a fucking word you says. Yeah.
Well,
But Matt and listeners, we shall see you next time.
this has been the
Sons of Aries podcast.
Take care of yourselves, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.